How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your August 2019 horoscope for Scorpio, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. We are ending July and starting August off with the new moon in Leo and Mercury stationing direct finally. With Mars, Venus, and the Sun all in Leo at this time in your 10th house, there can be a lot of focus on what's going on in the bigger picture of things. The 10th house not only has to do with career implications and, work stuff and your boss, but the 10th house is for the whole public and for the whole world to see. So while there's the Sun, Mars, and Venus, everything's kind of loud and in the public sphere and everything's kind of going big, it can not necessarily, I don't want to say it's bad or good, it's kind of just things are happening. While we have this new moon in Leo ending July off, I think this is a good time to reset your batteries, reset your intentions. You don't want to get too caught up in the moment with what Mercury retrograde brought. And this new moon in Leo is kind of like a time to step back more into your power with what you can bring and what you have to offer within the terms of your career and what capabilities you do have to share with other people. This is the 10th house, so this is more bigger deal stuff, but this new moon is a good time to kind of like chill out a little bit, catch your breath, and remember who you are so you can focus on that and you can bring more of that into the livelihood of your career or what you're doing with your life. And then on August 1st, that is when Mercury finally stations direct in Cancer, and this is happening in your 9th house. Now, Mercury, the planet of communication, messages, how we think, what our mindset's on, as it's been in Cancer, it's been focused on protecting and nurturing and empathizing and understanding. And this is in your 9th house of spirituality, of belief, of long distance travel, far distance travel, foreign languages, foreign cultures, anything to do with like esoteric stuff. And while Mercury's been in here, it's been thinking about things, its minds can be drifting on focusing on what's important here, what do I need to protect and what do I need to, see that is, valuable and sympathize with. As Mercury stations direct, I think this is giving you guys a little bit more clarity on what you should believe and believing in the things that you need to protect and that you want to empathize with and that you want to trust so you can start to move forward a little bit more. Then as we jump ahead about 10 days later on August 11th, that is when we're going to have Mercury re-enter Leo. And now Mercury still is in shadow at this time, so we're still focusing on the things that Mercury retrograde brought. But as it goes back into Leo, this is where you're going to feel less of that Mercury and Cancer vibe of, speaking softly and only speaking when something needs to be said. Mercury going into Leo is kind of like being able to express a higher authority in your tone of voice and also being able to see more of the opportunity for your message to be shown in the light. And this is going back into your 10th house of your career and bigger life stuff, so there's going to be, more action, focus on this area. But the one thing that I wanted to hit on is while Mercury's back in Leo, it's important to know that you have a capability to say something when it needs to be said. But while Mercury's in Leo, the big thing is, does it need to be said? Do you need to roar as loud as you can, or will you still get the point across if you just roar a little bit? Also on August 11th, that is when we have Jupiter finally stationing direct, and that is in your 2nd house, which is, who doesn't like money? But Jupiter's been in Sagittarius for about this whole year now, and as it first went in, it was creating all of this room and clearing out this area for things to grow in when it comes to 2nd house things like your money, your finances, what you own, what you physically possess. And as Jupiter's been retrograding, this has been more philosophical and more inquisitive about what you believe about money, what you believe about the things that you want, and what do you want, and what does that mean for you. And as Jupiter finally stations direct, this is now starting to bring opportunities and starting to bring in more abundance in that area of owning more things, of having more money and seeing more income come in and also maybe even being able to save more of it. So while Jupiter does go direct, this is really positive for you guys specifically. Then on August 14th, that is when we have Venus conjoin the Sun. And this is pretty important because Venus is now on the other side of the Sun. She's as far away as she's going to get from us. Venus is in Leo, so the planet of love and value and relationships and connecting and indulging and just making sure you're taken care of is in the sign of Leo, of being put in the spotlight, making sure you have validation, making sure the world can see you and you get the praise that you deserve. As it's conjoining the sun and going Kazemi, this is when it gets purified by fire, and Venus basically gets charged up and amped up with like this clean slate. This is a big part of Venus's synodic cycle, and we'll talk more about that when we go into next year when we have Venus retrograde in Gemini. However, as Venus conjoins the sun in your 10th house, I think this is being more shown and understanding more of your vital role and the value that you have in your workplace or in your life and how you influence the people around you. And it's important to understand that while you're in that spotlight, to really recognize the value that you do bring and that you do receive from the outside world. Then on August 15th, that is when we have the full moon in Aquarius. And so when we have a full moon, this is lighting up an axis in your chart. It's showing you both sides of the story. And now we're finally out of eclipse season. And this is the first full moon in Aquarius that we're having that's not an eclipse. So this is super, wonderful in my opinion. And while you've been having a lot of attention and focus on your 10th house stuff of bigger life things, where you're going, what's going on with your work and whatnot, this full moon is lighting up where you need to center yourself. The 4th house is where this full moon will be for you guys, because that's what Aquarius rules, is about your family, your home life, your parents, your heritage, where and how you center yourself and where that comes from. And so this full moon is showing you what, full moons light up what we don't always see. It lights up the nighttime. And as this is lighting up your 4th house of your family, of your roots, of where you're living, I think this is bringing into a bigger question and kind of seeing the dynamic of, as you have more value and expression being brought into the terms of bigger life stuff, like where do you need to center yourself? And this is Aquarius. This isn't necessarily tangible things. This is about having the right mindset and, having a sense of reality in your spirit and being able to construct better ideas that connect you to the bigger things that, I guess that work for you a little bit better, especially in the terms of how you live and where you live and what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Also on August 15th, that is when Mercury finally leaves shadow. So whatever, job problems you might have had or miscommunications or frustrations you had in that area, we could finally call that done, and Mercury can now finally tread new territory in Leo. And the one thing I wanted to hit on again is, while Mercury is in Leo, be expressive, be creative, show your voice out there, but again, you don't need to roar as loud as you can to get your point across. Mercury in Leo challenges you to remain in integrity, and remain authentic with how you communicate, but also remaining true to yourself, loyal to yourself, and being able to say something when you need to say it. Then on August 18th, that is when Mars enters Virgo, and Mars is the planet of our action, our drive, our intentions, how and why we're doing things. Mars is also a malefic planet though, so it brings frustrations, it severs, it cuts, it stings and pierces. It can cause us to be angry, it can cause us to get, just mad and frustrated at things. And while Mars is going into the sign of Virgo, where Virgo is Mercury ruled, it's more focused on analytics, details, smaller numbers, computing, analysis, and all of that stuff, Mars in Virgo can help us be more acute and be more specific with our actions and our intentions. However, Mars in Virgo can also get really frustrated with all the tiny things that are coming up and can kind of get overwhelmed with all of the big list of things. Now, Mars is going into your 11th house of friendships and, humanitarian ideas, bigger groups of people. Your midheaven could also fall in this sign, so, this can also import career significations. However, as Mars is going through Virgo, you're going to see yourself maybe getting a little bit frustrated, maybe a little bit annoyed with all of the specific things that maybe your friends are calling you out to do, or certain obligations and commitments are taking your time away. But the one thing I wanted to focus on with Mars and Virgo is, accomplishing one task at a time and, putting your focus into the one thing that actually calls your attention, because you'll be able to do it, and Mars in Virgo gives us the energy to handle all of the tiny things that we need to get done. Then on August 21st, that is when Venus enters Virgo, and now Venus is the planet, of course, of love and relationships and value, and she wants you to indulge and have sex and have fun. But she's going into her sign of fall, where she's not really having a good time. It's kind of hard for her. She's kind of frustrated. Because while Venus is in Virgo, it is her sign of fall. It's kind of like, there's a lot of these details that can get overwhelming, and things aren't specific, and things aren't exactly the way that she wants it to be, so she can get upset. And the thing is that you have to remember with Venus in Virgo is being able to enjoy the little things that you still care about without holding on to the attachment of, this matters. While Venus is going through Virgo and going into your 11th house of friends, this is going to be also a time of connecting more with friends and finding more of those relationships, valuable, but in specific and small ways and more mercurial ways. But Venus and Virgo can also be like, I have all these, my friends want me to do all this stuff, but I really don't want to do it. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But then on August 23rd, that is when the sun comes from Leo and goes into Virgo, and the light, the main focus, is kind of brought into play here with friendships and bigger groups of people and communities and humanitarian things like giving back to people and taking care of one another. But then on August 24th, on the next day, that's when Venus conjoins Mars. And I bring this up because while Mars is in Virgo and it's kind of like you're focusing all of your attention here, you're getting caught up in the smaller details, Venus is kind of like, even though Mars is handling all of the smaller tasks that Venus and both Mars have, Venus is kind of like, if you're going to do all of these things, if you're going to flood your list, or flood your calendar with all this stuff, hanging out with people or whatever, make sure you're having fun with it and enjoy the smaller moments while you can, because you may get caught up in everything else. And the big thing too is not to stress. It's gonna get done, it's gonna happen. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but it's about doing what you can to make sure that it goes the way that you want to, and letting go of the expectation that you have. But then on August 29th, that is when we have Mercury enter Virgo, and this is when things start to get a lot more clear, because now Mercury is entering its home sign where it rules and it can operate really, really well. Mercury is, of course, the planet of communication, our mindset, our ideas, how we're thinking, how we're going about our thoughts, and what's kind of giving us the impulse to do this stuff. While Mercury is in Virgo, it can think clearly, it can be specific, it can organize, it can detail, it can cross the T's, dot the I's, make sure everything's grammatically correct. And so while this is going on in your 11th house, while the Sun and Mars and Venus are in there kind of like, bringing all of that, crazy energy from your career area to your friendship, this is where Mercury can start to organize, be more efficient, be more effective, and not be so scatterbrained. But then on August 30th, we end the month with the new moon in Virgo, and now we have the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all of the personal planets in your 11th house. And what I think is important about this is while you're focusing on, this could be also career implications, like your midheaven can be in Virgo if you're a Scorpio rising, but while you have Mars and Venus and the Sun and the Moon and Mercury, I'll focus on this friendship area, on this bigger groups of people, on this community, on this network stuff. I think what's important is to give yourself some credit while this new moon's happening, give yourself some ease, because while the moon's in Virgo, it can be like, I gotta do this, I gotta detail, I gotta clean something or whatever. I think the big thing to realize is what needs your focus and what doesn't. What can you do right now versus if you can't do it right now, you've got to let go of it. And so while we wrap August off with that, I think it's going to be a good time to really look at what can you do right here, right now, and that's going to help us get through September in a lot more positive way. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.